So the Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy has officially been confirmed to be multi-platform, but what does that mean for Remake Part 3? Could that launch day and date on all systems? Based on some of the wording from Square, it kind of seems like it could. We're also going to take a look at the brand new trailer for Resident Evil Requiem and kind of analyze not just the trailer, but the really strange marketing cycle this game has been going through. So if any of that sounds cool to you, you can like the video, subscribe, and as usual, let's talk about it. So starting off first with that brand new trailer for Resident Evil 9 Requiem, Rec9ium, however you want to call it. I like calling it Rec9ium, it's kind of fun. But this is a really good trailer, and honestly, I feel like this probably should have been the reveal trailer. It kind of has everything you need to get someone excited. There's intrigue based on the characters. There's just the right amount of spooky and exploration. There's not really much in the way of gameplay, but I feel like this trailer had the energy of a reveal trailer. I don't think the initial reveal trailer for Rec9ium was bad, but this one feels like, yeah, you probably should have started off first with it. And the cool thing about this trailer is we get to see footage of Grace just out in the city. Now, I don't know what city she's currently in. Obviously, we know that within the story, she does go back to Raccoon City, but this shows Grace on her FBI job. Some of those lines we heard in the announced trailer from someone talking to Grace about investigating some murders, we actually see her going to one of the crime scenes. But the big focus on this trailer is, again, the night that Grace's mom died. She seemingly hid something behind a painting. We don't know what's in there. It could be a journal, could be evidence of whatever case Alyssa was studying. There also, curiously enough, is a shot of a body laying on a gurney with wounds on its left arm. And I've seen some people say, what if it's Wesker? Wesker, obviously, if you played the previous Resident Evils, did have some weird stuff going on with his left arm when he transformed into his final monster phase in Resident Evil 5. And there's been hints for a while now, could Wesker be brought back? When you finish Resident Evil 4 Remake, it seems like they're kind of changing up the story a tiny bit. So there could be some sort of precedence for a Wesker coming back. Maybe the other Wesker, I believe it was Alex, perhaps they could show up too. But either way, that shot of the arm was kind of interesting. We also get more shots of that really strange looking old man who's been sitting in the chair and seemingly been watching Grace for a very long time. He has photos of her from back when she was in her hotel room with her mom on her laptop the night that her mom was murdered. So this guy's been watching her for a while. He's got this weird kind of headset goggle setup that we see at the very end of the trailer. It's super spooky and intriguing. He also is seemingly speaking to Grace about not being able to avoid her destiny. So clearly there is something more going on with Grace. So again, I feel like this was actually a really, really good trailer. But when it comes to the marketing of Resident Evil Requiem, it has been a little strange. And I think the biggest issue I've been seeing from some other fans is that it feels like maybe there are too many trailers. And I get it, the game comes out in February. You got to market these trailers consistently to keep it in people's minds. And no one's forcing any of us to watch these trailers. But it can be exciting to check them out when they do release. But I think the big issue is that since the game's reveal in June at Summer Game Fest, every trailer we've gotten has kind of been slightly different variations of the same thing. It's all focusing on what is seemingly the beginning of the game. And if I were to go out on a limb here, I would assume that all of the footage we've been seeing in all of these trailers is probably from the first hour of the game, maybe 30 minutes. Which I get it, you don't want to spoil anything, you want to build up the mystery and the intrigue, but it does get a little repetitive after a while. And I've described the marketing for this game as Capcom being very, very meticulous. I think you could argue overly meticulous. And it's really been a slow drip feed of new stuff and information and some articles here and there, but the trailers, again, have not really showed us anything new, which honestly leads me to believe that there is way more to this game that Capcom is just not ready to show off yet. A pretty big major twist. I think there's more to the story and to the gameplay, because all we've really seen is the beginning of Grace's story with her mom, the night her mom was murdered, her at the FBI, and her ending up in that building where she's avoiding not Lisa Trevor. So it's all been kind of the same thing. And again, I know there's only so much that Capcom can really show off at the beginning before spoiling things, but it feels like, to me at least, that there is more to this game. And the rumors for a very long time is that Leon will be in this game, and I hope that he is, but I think that's what they're waiting for. As of right now, we're just seeing all of the early Grace stuff, but I think probably at the Game Awards, they'll probably have a new trailer, and since that will be closer to the game's release, I think that's when they will really bust open the game's marketing, the trailers will get better, and start to offer more footage in terms of the story and the gameplay, assuming that involves a Leon. So again, the marketing for this game has been kind of weird. It's not too bad, it's just we're seeing a lot of the same things, and I think people are so interested in this game and the story and what's going to happen that we really just want to desperately see something really new. But I think because of whatever that twist in the story may be, Capcom is purposely holding back. Now, interestingly enough, the game will be at this year's Tokyo Game Show, but I don't know if they're gonna have another new trailer or if they're just gonna reuse this current trailer and maybe give out some information online. Either way, I am very excited for this game. I thought this trailer is the best trailer they've put out. It should have probably been the first trailer, but it's just been a really interesting phase with this game's marketing. Perhaps they maybe started it a little too early, but again, I think when the Game Awards comes around, whatever big secret Capcom has been holding back, I think they'll finally reveal, and we will really start to see that marketing open up. One can only hope. Now, moving over to the pretty big Final Fantasy VII Remake news, there was a Nintendo Direct that took place this morning as I'm recording. And not only did they give us the release date for 7 Remake on Switch 2 and Xbox, which is January 22nd, 2026, by the way, a little bit later than I was expecting. I was hoping maybe they could squeeze that game out by the end of this year, but let it cook. You want it to come out properly. With that came a bunch of new trailers, and I gotta say the footage of this game running on the Switch 2 looks really, really good, and seemingly based on a lot of the previews that a lot of people have gotten to play, Remake is apparently like one of the best looking and best running games currently on the Switch 2, which is pretty impressive. Sometimes Square Enix doesn't have the greatest track record when it comes to ports, but apparently this one's coming out pretty good. Now, when it comes to the multi-platform stuff, we have a few interesting quotes and tweets to pull from, which kind of got my mind racing a little bit. And the first tweet is from the main English Final Fantasy VII Twitter account, where they write, FF7 Remake Integrate arrives on Switch 2, Xbox Series X and S, and Xbox on PC on January 22nd, 2026. That's not all. The Remake Trilogy will also be making its way to Switch 2, Xbox platforms, as well as PlayStation 5, Steam, and Epic Games Store. But if you look at the Japanese Twitter account, the way they word it is a little bit different. They go on to write, the series will be coming on multiple platforms, including, obviously, all the aforementioned platforms, and Epic Games Store until the conclusion. And then we have Hamaguchi's tweet where he writes, FF7 Remake is officially launching on Switch 2 and Xbox. The fate of Cloud and Sephiroth returns once again, transcending platform boundaries. Now, before we move into the day one speculation, this is great. For them to officially confirm what I had been speculating, and so many other people have been speculating on for months now, yeah, the entire trilogy will be making its way multi-platform, which again is the right move. Remake, Rebirth are phenomenal games, and the more people that get to check these games out and see how incredible they are, the better. That is like my main thing. And I do see, oddly enough, some people online on some of my like TikTok videos and sometimes on YouTube, there are some people out there who, for whatever reason, are kind of mad that the Remake trilogy is going multi-platform and they don't see the point in it. And based on a conversation I saw two people having in one of my TikTok videos, the mentality of the person who was upset that the game was going multi-platform seemingly has this all or nothing mentality of, okay, if it's going to be multi-platform, then it needs to sell like 5 million units on each console or it's not worth it, which isn't how things work. But like, the more people that get to access these games, the better, because these games, we don't know their budgets, but we can speculate that they're probably incredibly expensive to produce. And locking yourself to one console with a smaller install base, it makes it much harder for you to recoup your costs. So even though historically Square's games don't sell really well on an Xbox, it's nice that it's there. I think the Switch 2 will have a much more bigger install base who's ready to play a Final Fantasy. It's been a while since Nintendo has gotten their hands on a remake of Final Fantasy or a big mainline Final Fantasy. Also, the fact that Nintendo and Square Enix have mended fences and are working together again is really, really big news, considering, the prior history and the way things went down. The president of Nintendo back in the 90s, around the time FF7 was getting ready to start production, was incredibly upset that Square Enix and that team decided to jump ship to the PlayStation. And when he spoke to the devs, he was very nice, very cordial, thank you for working with us, I wish you the best. But afterwards, I believe he released a press statement basically saying, Square, if you guys leave, don't ever think about coming back. And in fact, we don't even need RPGs. I think what he said was RPGs are for lonely basement dwellers. So clearly he was really upset FF7 would come out and do gangbusters. So now enough time has passed to the point where they're working closely together again. And that has to do a lot with different leadership and, just moving forward and trying to do what's best for your franchise, which again is the right move. As far as PC goes, when Rebirth came out, we never really got concrete numbers, but based on some of the speculation that people had and some of the more unreliable stuff like VG charts, it seemed like Rebirth may have sold over 600,000 copies on PC in its first week, which completely shattered any expectation Square Enix had for Rebirth on PC. And I think the rumor going around was that Rebirth had smashed Square Enix's quarterly expectation for the PC version of Rebirth. It did that in 1 week. So what they were expecting the game to do in a certain amount of months, it did in 1 week. So clearly there is an install base there that is really hungry for these types of games. And again, to be as successful as you should be, you gotta be multi-platform. I think a really good example of that is Clair Obscur, which granted is a much smaller game. Its budget was also much more modest than a AAA title, which, people get mad when terms like that are used, but it just kind of helps differentiate budget stuff. But I think as of last reported, Clair Obscur sold, I think 3.3 million units, but that wasn't factoring in Xbox numbers because Microsoft is really weird when it comes to reporting their numbers and Game Pass, so that kind of fudges things up a little bit. But Clair Obscur would not have sold as well as it did if it wasn't multi-platform, which means it wouldn't have been as successful as it is if it wasn't multi-platform. So it just goes to show you how important it is to have these types of games available to as many people as possible. And they clearly want people to get invested in this Remake trilogy in time for Rebirth to come out, especially Remake Part 3, because Remake on Switch 2 and on Xbox are getting a bunch of kind of crazy features, specifically always having max HP, always having max MP, disabling instant death, never having to wait for your ATB to fill up, so you can literally just spam abilities and spells. They even put out a video demonstrating this, and it is nuts. Just seeing Cloud mow through every enemy because he's now able to do maximum damage, which is another stat booster they've added. But seeing him just spam fire spells is insane. But it's very clear that they want as many people as possible to experience a Remake, get caught up, and then jump on board with Rebirth. Now, they do obviously mention Rebirth is coming to Switch 2 and Xbox. There's no time frame, but if I was a gambling man, I would assume with Remake coming out in January, potentially, maybe they could have Rebirth hit multi-platform maybe December of 2026, maybe January of 2027. So you're kind of bookending the beginning of 2026 with Remake and ending it with Rebirth going multi-platform. That's not confirmed. That's just me pulling stuff out of my butt and throwing it at the wall. And when it comes to all of those bonus features, I believe they're calling them streamlined progression. There's a reason for that stuff. And I've seen some people say well, what's the point of, putting that in there? It defeats the purpose of combat, or it's just easy mode. Why would you do that? To those people, I say, this is not for you. This is for people who maybe don't have time to play these games, or maybe want to get invested, but they want to do it as quickly as possible without just watching cutscenes on YouTube. And we do have a quote directly from Hamaguchi. This comes to us from the Square Enix blog written by Duncan Heaney. Shout out to Duncan Heaney. That man writes, I think, just about every single Final Fantasy VII related article on this website, and he does a fantastic job with these write-ups. The way that he organizes them, they're always really easy to digest. But moving over to Hamaguchi's quote, he says, I feel that the way people enjoy content has become more flexible these days, as we see with video streaming platforms, and that people also want the same thing from games. With options to tailor the experience based on the time they have and their levels of interest. I have also had personal experiences where I wanted to play something with the limited time I have, but gave up because of the time it takes to level up characters or traverse the game. That's exactly why I think that the Streamlined progression feature is very effective, to give players smooth access to the story. Now you're probably wondering, why did you read that quote? It has to do with Streamlined progression. I think that's the point. They want people, again, like I said, to catch up on this remake trilogy as fast as possible without missing out on the important details or spending too long on combat. Why? I think that means that Remake Part 3 has a really good chance now of releasing day and date on all platforms. And I've been saying for a while now that I think, and this is kind of like the, I guess you could call this the bad ending, the Advent Children scenario, if you will, that Remake Part 3 will launch exclusively on PS5 and then at a later date, it'll go multi-platform. I've been saying that. I've been hoping I'm wrong, and I think I might be. Just based on Hamaguchi's quote, based on the way that the Twitter accounts kind of describe this remake trilogy coming to multi-platforms until its conclusion, it really feels like whatever exclusivity deal Square Enix had with Sony perhaps expired. And that's kind of interesting because many years ago, before my channel kind of found its footing, there was an article that came out, and it had to do with Microsoft trying to purchase Bethesda and Activision and how it was this big monopoly, and Sony decided to get in their business and say, yeah, this isn't right, this shouldn't happen. And then the court said, oh, Sony, you're here? Well, you're gonna have to disclose your exclusivity agreements too. And so they did. And Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I believe Final Fantasy XVI was also listed there, but they were labeled as permanent console exclusives for Sony. As we know, nothing is always permanent. Well, a few things are. But my headcanon here, and again, I'm just basing this off of my own weird brain. I'm not pulling information and facts. Don't take this to the bank. But when we first saw Final Fantasy VII Remake revealed, it was in 2015 at that PlayStation Experience. So maybe around that time is when Square Enix had really inked their deal with Sony. Well, it's been a little over 10 years now since that debut. It's possible that maybe that exclusivity agreement Sony had with Square was a 10-year deal. Well, we're now past that 10-year mark, which is maybe why the Remake trilogy is now going multi-platform. And if that exclusivity is up, maybe that means it no longer applies to Part 3. Again, this is all just pure speculation, but it's what I'm really hoping happens. Again, I think Remake Part 3 is going to be the biggest and best of this Remake trilogy. I think they're going to really go all out, probably with their budget as well, although the budget stuff has probably been figured out a long time ago. I would assume at the start of this project, and probably when they realized, yeah, this is going to be a 3-part game, is when they really finalized all of their budget stuff for each game. But if you want to make sure the most people play the game, that it sells the best it can, and that it's healthy, being multi-platform day one makes the most sense to me anyway. And I know there's some people that are kind of downplaying, Remake coming to Xbox and Switch too, but for me, man, like I said earlier, I'm just excited for more people to get their hands on this trilogy and get to experience just how good it really is. Now, interestingly enough, the Square Enix blog also does mention Remake Part 3 very briefly, and they go on to write, another common question about the game is whether the entire trilogy is coming to Switch 2 and Xbox. We can confirm that yes, they are. We'll have more information about Rebirth and the in-development third game in the future. So that last sentence there, in the future, it's starting to really make me think that we're probably not going to get anything Remake Part 3 related this year. I'm holding out hope. The copium is there for the Game Awards, but based on that and based on what Nomura said during the Ever Crisis live stream of they know when they're going to announce their big announcement. They have everything planned out and scheduled. Just be patient. I think we're probably going to have to wait until next year, which does make sense from a marketing standpoint. Again, a lot of us are working off of how Rebirth was marketed, and we got the first official teaser for Rebirth a year before the marketing kicked in. So we're all kind of under the impression that they would maybe do the same thing for Remake Part 3 and give us a teaser this year that we could then dissect repeatedly ad nauseum for a year until next year, maybe sometime in the summer, or depending on when, Remake Part 3 is even going to release, sometime in late 2026 is when the marketing cycle could potentially start. And that really depends on when they're going to release Part 3. Again, the devs have been saying for a while now that the progress on development has been going super smooth, no issues, they're on track, and everything is going according to schedule. So if the game should release in 2027, I think the marketing would probably start sometime in mid to late 2026, but you know, in the future. So as always, temper expectations. And to end the video, I will show you guys this brand new key art that they've created for the Remake Trilogy. This is also going to be one of the box arts for the game on the Switch too. I also think that if it gets a physical release on Xbox, it will also have this reversible cover. But it's this really cool, simple image of Cloud and Sephiroth on a white background, with a sky that kind of looks eerily similar to maybe the summoning of Meteor. Maybe I'm looking a little too much into that, but it's a really, really beautiful piece of artwork. I'm definitely using it for the thumbnail. It looks super clean. But with that being said, that's the video. Let me know in the comments down below, what are you thinking so far about Resident Evil Requiem? Do you kind of have some of the same nitpicks from fans of like, well, we're getting all these trailers, but there's not really much new? And do you think there is an entirely different aspect to this game that Capcom is waiting to show us? And what are your thoughts so far on the Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy officially being confirmed to be multi-platform? And how do you think Part 3 is going to release? Do you think it will be exclusive to PS5 at first, or do you think it will be multi-platform day one? I am Curious Corduroy. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.